Number 1. Carl Wayne Buntion.
If I could change it, I would, but I can't. And it's been hard on me for 32 years, too.
On June 27, 1990, in Houston, Texas, Officer James Irby stopped a vehicle with Carl Wayne Buntion as a passenger. As the officer spoke with the driver, Buntion got out, shot him in the head, and fired twice more as he lay on the ground. He fled, shooting at bystanders before being caught in a warehouse. At the time, he was on parole after serving 13 months of a 15-year sentence for sexually assaulting a teenager. Convicted of capital murder, he was sentenced to death in 1991 and executed by lethal injection on April 21, 2022, at age 78. He became the oldest inmate to be executed in Texas. He was on death row for 31 years. Number 2, Billie Wayne Coble.
You say, I did. How can you say something if you wasn't there?
On August 29, 1989, in Axtell, Texas, Billie Wayne Coble committed a series of brutal murders targeting his wife's family. After his wife, Karen Visha, sought a divorce, Coble's behavior became increasingly erratic and threatening. That evening, he bound and gagged Karen's 3 daughters and her nephew in their home, cutting the phone lines to prevent communication. He then proceeded to the residence of Karen's brother, Bobby Visha, a local police officer. Following a struggle, he fatally shot Bobby in the neck. Then, he went to the home of Karen's parents and shot them both dead. Returning to Karen's house, he abducted her at gunpoint, informing her of the murders and displaying items taken from the victims as proof. He attempted to flee with Karen, but after a high-speed chase with law enforcement, he crashed the vehicle and was apprehended. Coble was convicted and sentenced to death. After lengthy legal proceedings, he was executed by lethal injection in Texas on February 28, 2019, at the age of 70. He was on death row for 30 years. Number 3, Clarence Ray Allen. In 1974, Clarence Ray Allen planned the burglary of Fran's Market in Fresno, California. When 17-year-old Mary Sue Kitts planned on exposing his involvement, he ordered for her to be killed. She was killed, and her body was never found. He was arrested and sentenced. While serving the life sentence, Allen hired a fellow inmate, Billie Ray Hamilton, to kill all the witnesses that testified against him. In 1980, after his release, Hamilton murdered Brian, Douglas White, and Josephine Rocha, all 3 who worked at Fran's Market. Allen was convicted of 3 counts of murder and sentenced to death. He was executed by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison on January 17, 2006, at age 76. His last meal was buffalo steak and fry bread, a bucket of KFC white meat-only chicken, sugar-free pecan pie, sugar-free walnut ice cream, and whole milk. He was on death row for 23 years. Number 4, John B. Nixon. In 1985, John B. Nixon was hired to kill Virginia Tucker in Brandon, Mississippi, by her ex-husband. On that day, Nixon, his son Henry, and associate Gilbert Jimenez went to the Tuckers' home. He pulled out a firearm and said, "I brought y'all something." Thomas Tucker, Virginia's husband, offered money to spare their lives, but he replied, "That's not what I'm after. The deal's already been made." He shot at Thomas, who managed to escape despite being wounded. He then shot Virginia in the head. She was taken to the hospital but died the next day. Nixon was arrested after Thomas identified him in a lineup. He was convicted and sentenced to death. He was executed by lethal injection in 2005 by the state of Mississippi at 77 years, becoming the oldest to be executed at that time. For his last meal, he requested a well-done T-bone steak, buttered asparagus spears, a baked potato with sour cream, peach pie, vanilla ice cream, and sweet tea. He spent nearly 20 years on death row. Number 5, Walter Moody Jr. In December 1989, Walter Leroy Moody Jr. carried out a series of mail bombings targeting the judiciary. His motive was revenge. He was angry after losing a legal battle over a 1972 bomb possession conviction. In 1989, Moody sent a mail bomb to the home of Judge Robert S. Vance, a federal appeals court judge. The bomb exploded, killing Vance and seriously injuring his wife. 2 days later, he sent another bomb that killed civil rights lawyer Robert E. Robinson. He was convicted and sentenced to death. On April 19, 2018, at age 83, he was executed by lethal injection in Alabama, becoming the oldest inmate executed in modern U.S. history. He declined to make a final statement, and his last meal was Philly cheesesteaks, Dr. Pepper, and M&M's. He was on death row for 20 years. Number 6, Elias Syriani. On July 28, 1990, in Charlotte, North Carolina, Elias Syriani attacked his wife, Teresa, despite a protective order against him. That night, he waited outside her home. When Teresa arrived with their 10-year-old son, Elias blocked her car and repeatedly used a screwdriver on her through the window. Their son ran for help, but the attack left Teresa with severe injuries. She survived for 28 days before dying from a brain wound. Elias was arrested, convicted of capital murder, and sentenced to death. He was executed by lethal injection at the Central Prison, North Carolina, on November 18, 2005. At 67, he was one of the oldest people executed in the United States since 1976. He never requested a final meal. He spent 15 years on death row. Number 7, James Hubard. On January 10, 1977, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, James Barney Hubard contacted police to report a shooting at the home of 62-year-old Lillian Montgomery, with whom he had been living following his release from prison. He claimed that Montgomery had fatally shot herself. However, investigations revealed that Montgomery had been shot 3 times, in the face, head, and shoulder, and robbed of her jewelry along with $500 in cash and checks. Hubard, who had previously served a 19-year sentence for murder, was arrested and charged and sentenced to death for Montgomery's murder. After numerous appeals, he was executed by lethal injection on August 5, 2004, at the age of 74, making him the oldest person to be executed in Alabama. His last meal was 2 eggs over medium, 4 pieces of bacon, sliced tomatoes, fried green tomatoes, pineapple slices with mayonnaise, white bread, a banana, and a medium-sized V8. He spent 27 years on death row. Number 8, Brandon Astor Jones. On June 17, 1979, Brandon Astor Jones and his accomplice, Van Roosevelt Solomon, robbed a Tenneco store in Cobb County, Georgia. Officer Kendall, noticing the open store late at night, investigated and heard gunshots. Inside, he found Jones and Solomon and discovered the store manager, Roger Tackett, shot 5 times from behind. Both men were arrested and later convicted of murder. Solomon was executed in 1985. Jones's death sentence was overturned in 1989, but reinstated in 1997. After years of appeals, Jones was executed by lethal injection in Georgia on February 3, 2016 at age 72. During his execution, the execution team struggled for 45 minutes to insert the IV into his veins, but they asked a doctor in attendance to insert it into Jones' groin. He was on death row for 37 years. Number 9, Thomas Arthur. In 1982, Thomas "Tommy" Arthur was convicted of a murder-for-hire plot in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. While on work release for a prior murder, Arthur was hired by Judy Wicker to kill her husband, Troy Wicker, for $10,000 in life insurance. On February 1, 1982, Arthur shot Troy as he slept and staged the scene as a burglary. Judy initially blamed a burglar, but later testified against Arthur. He was sentenced to death. After years of appeals, Arthur was executed by lethal injection in Alabama on May 25, 2017, at age 75. Number 10, John Albert Boltz. On April 18, 1984, in Shawnee, Oklahoma, John Albert Boltz confronted his wife, Pat Kirby, accusing her of infidelity. That night, Boltz made threatening calls to their home. After one call, Pat's son, also his stepson, 22-year-old Doug Kirby, went to Boltz's trailer. Soon after, Boltz called again, threatening to harm Doug. Police was contacted and they found Doug's body. He had been stabbed 8 times. Boltz claimed self-defense but was convicted of first-degree murder. After years of appeals, he was executed by lethal injection on December 16, 2004. He was the oldest person to be executed in Oklahoma at age 74. He was on death row for 22 years. Thank you guys for watching.